Hello, YouTube. Today I want to talk a bit about Revenant. Is she the most difficult character in Nightreign to play? Short answer, probably yes. So let's talk about that and how you can actually have success with her. Revenant summons spirits to aid her and her allies, but she has the lowest HP in the game and ostensibly is a faith-based caster, but her only reliable means of doing damage with her starting armament is her cursed claws. The developers built her around being a support character, but it's really not worth it to keep her starting seal around for the heal incantation. It's difficult to get the heal off in the middle of a fight, and with randoms, it's impossible to coordinate that you want to heal them. Even when playing solo, it can be difficult to get a heal off for yourself or your summons. Once she does get some incantations that she can use, she's reliant on a consumable item, Starlight Shards, to replenish her FP. This isn't a huge issue during the day, since you should be running into a lot of different sites of grace, but you probably will need Starlight Shards against the night bosses and the Night Lord if you want to be able to cast throughout the entire fight. She is just as vulnerable as Recluse, if not more vulnerable, because Recluse has more iframes on her dodge, yet Revenant's forced to play in the front line more than Recluse, because unlike Recluse, she doesn't have infinite FP. Although she does have slightly more FP than Recluse at the same level. She has the highest FP of any character in the game. But Recluse has the same faith scaling as Revenant, so she's just as effective with using incantations as Revenant is. With all this, you can start to see what makes Revenant a bit of a difficult character to play. Her playstyle has to be dictated by one of two things: the relics that you start with and the drops that you get. To a certain extent, I suppose every character has the same limitations as far as their playstyles go. Revenant is probably more impacted by this than most characters are, which is in part because of incantations, and you don't know what incantations are going to drop. Recluse has a similar issue in that regard. But when playing Revenant, if you struggle staying alive, you can build a loadout for health, which will make things a bit easier. On the other hand, you can play a more passive support role to keep your teammates and yourself alive and buffed. And if you get the right drops, Revenant can become a bit of a glass cannon. Some incantations are crazy strong, and even without a relic increasing her FP, she has a ton, so you likely only need 1 or 2 Starlight Shards to get through the Night Lord. I feel like I also have to mention the meme playstyle, as she can be very effective with large weapons. She has C scalings for both strength and dexterity, so she's not going to be terrible with any weapon in the game. If you get a great drop, feel free to use it. Personally, I have a tendency to avoid that playstyle because of her low health pool, and I just enjoy using her for incantations. If I want to do a run where I'm using a large weapon, I'm probably going to be playing a different character like Wilder or Raider. The one thing that she is almost certainly the best at in the entire game is reviving down teammates. Her first reviving tool is, of course, her ultimate, which provides an instant revive for any teammate who's not too far away when she uses it. Her next revive tool is her summons, which are surprisingly good at reviving down teammates. If they're near a down teammate, it's fairly likely that they will attempt to revive. Helen has the best DPS to revive a down teammate, but Frederick and Sebastian can be good in their own right as well. Sebastian's roar seems to be particularly good at reviving teammates who are close enough for his roar to hit them. But most surprisingly, Revenant's starting weapon, her cursed claws, are buffed for revives. They do the same base damage for a revive as a greatsword does. And if you're two-handing, they hit twice, making them one of the best options for reviving teammates in the entire game. And that's one reason why, for most runs, I'd recommend keeping Revenant's Curse Claws equipped, regardless of what other weapons you get. I want to get a bit more specific into pieces of her kit, so let's start by talking about her summons. Revenant may be squishy, but her summons do help her have a melee playstyle if that's how you want to play her. They help take some attention off of her, and they can take some attention off of your teammates when you're playing in a duo or a trio. Additionally, if her summons kill mobs, that will proc her passive necromancy ability, Revenant doesn't need to be the one to get the final blow to summon enemies back as spirits, but her summons shouldn't be a set and forget item in combat, particularly against bosses. If one is killed, it takes longer to regenerate its health than if she recalls it. And if they're killed in battle, you can't recall them back until they have regenerated at least half of their HP. There is a lot of room for min-maxing her summons and switching summons or recalling them to a different location. If you do this while the boss is attacking, you can get some free damage in while also avoiding the summon taking damage themselves. Playing like this does require a lot of micromanaging, so Revenant probably wouldn't be doing much else if you are playing like that, but that can be a piece that you can use for her kit. At the very least, being able to recall your summons before they get killed can be really helpful. But the more that you play with her, the more that you'll get a sense of how you can do this and when each summon is good. For me, Frederick is usually the first one that I summon in a fight. For the first camp of the game and any similar camps, I might start with Helen, but otherwise, Helen usually goes down far too quickly. Sebastian is good to tank a boss, or if the boss is slow moving because Sebastian can't move himself. I also like to call out Sebastian before ulting, as Sebastian has the most effective ultimate of all of the summons, shooting a giant beam from his mouth that does decent damage. His beam also does good revive damage if you use it for that purpose. One of my favorite things about Revenant is how you can use her ultimate in different situations. Her basic ultimate, without any of her relics equipped, revives all downed allies and makes herself and her allies and summons immortal for 15 seconds. You take damage during this time period, but you cannot die. Additionally, whichever one of her summons who is out when she ults will use their own quote-unquote ultimate ability. Helen does a quick thrusting attack for additional DPS. This can be strong if Helen actually hits, although I've noticed she more often misses than anything if you use it. Frederick has a spin to win technique that does pretty significant stance damage if that's what you're looking for. And Sebastian, as mentioned earlier, will launch a powerful beam attack. Because your ultimate makes your teammates immortal for 15 seconds, it can be used either before or after your teammates die. It can also be used to save yourself if you're low on health and about to be killed. It should not be something that you save solely for reviving down teammates. Depending on the circumstances, it can be most effective to save your teammates from dying or letting your summon use their special ability. Generally speaking in this game, I would say that it's better for your teammates to stay alive as opposed to dying and having to revive, since the more that they die, the harder it is to revive them. So if you're only using Revenant's ult to revive your down teammates, you're probably not getting as much value out of it as you could. And this is even before relics are equipped. We'll talk a bit more about relics in a moment. The downside in her ultimate lies mostly in how your teammates utilize it. It really is a support ultimate, and if your teammates don't take advantage of the immortality that they have, then it can feel wasted. It would be nice to get a more clear visual indicator for your teammates that they are immortal when the ultimate goes off, because far too often, teammates don't seem to realize when Revenant's ulted. It gives them a free window to do as much damage as they can to the boss. As good as Revenant's ultimate is, it can be far better if you're using her relics for it. She has some of the best character-specific relics in the game, in my opinion, and they largely revolve around her ult. She has 3 relics that impact her ult specifically. The first relic triggers a Ghost Flame explosion upon ultimate R activation. The second expends your own HP to fully heal nearby allies during your ultimate. And the last strengthens family and allies when your ultimate's activated. Using the Ghost Flame explosion is the only way to have your ult be able to damage enemies. It doesn't do a ton of damage, but it is better than nothing, and it has some knockback effect. Considering how important damage is in this game, it can feel much more impactful to have an ultimate that actually does some damage. Expending your HP to fully heal nearby allies during your ultimate is the ultimate support ability, and it gives your ultimate even more utility before your teammates are downed. It also gives you even more reason to use your ultimate before your teammates have died. While immortality on its own is nice, immortality and healing your teammates to full is even better. The only drawback to that, of course, is that you lose your own HP, and you will probably need to use a flask to replenish your HP. But this relic is still arguably the best one for her in using her ult. If you ult and your teammates get their health revived, it makes it easier for them to want to go in and attack the boss, rather than having an instinct to heal themselves if their health is low when you ult. Finally, the relic that strengthens family and allies when your ult is activated gives your teammates and your summons a 25% damage boost for 30 seconds. If your teammates take advantage of this, it is absolutely huge. I already mentioned how good your ult can be to allow your teammates to be able to focus on the boss, and this makes it even more important that they take advantage of that. A 25% damage boost, along with immortality, potentially along with everything else, all of her other relic effects, is fantastic, and it can easily help you win a fight and or turn the tides in a fight. The other good thing about these relics is that they largely push you towards wanting to ult in a more offensive rather than defensive manner. All of these effects encourage your teammates to play more offensively after you ult, whereas again, if you ult after your teammates have died, you're really only using it defensively, and you're not getting much advantage out of it. And if you revive your teammates with your ult, they don't get to take advantage of the immortality that your ult provides. One thing to note when using the effect that expends your HP to fully heal nearby allies is that it appears that it is currently bugged when trying to pair it with the relic that regenerates your HP and allies' HP when you get to low health. I did some testing on this in the training ground, and when you try to use this, the HP regeneration kicks in right away for your summons, but it doesn't kick in for Revenant. If you don't heal yourself after you ult and you stay at low health, your HP will start to regenerate after 50 seconds have passed. Now that buff is designed to re-proc every 50 seconds if you're still at low health, so it suggests to me that it's simply bugged, and that it should be kicking in if you fall to low health when you use your ultimate. Relatedly, if you're using this relic, which gives you both the HP regeneration at low health as well as a low HP damage negation buff, the low HP damage negation buff does kick in when you use your ult, but it disappears after 15 seconds, even if you're still low health. These are obviously both very niche situations, because I don't necessarily expect that you'd sit around at low health without taking a flask yourself while in the middle of a fight, but I wanted to let you know if you want to combine these two relics, there are some problems with it right now. I assume that something about Revenant's immortality with her ult may be having an effect on both of them, but I'm not sure. But I do feel fairly certain in saying that it is a bug rather than an intended effect, based on what I'm seeing and what you can see in the footage here. Her final character-specific effect is one that powers up Revenant while her summons are out, which again is another very, very good relic for her. When Helen is out, Revenant receives 1 HP per second regeneration. That's easily the worst effect of any of her summons. Another reason why Helen's just not that good. For Frederick, Revenant gets a 10% damage boost, and for Sebastian, Revenant gets a 20% damage negation boost. Both those last two effects are very good, and they last as long as her summon is out. These are strong, although limited in effectiveness against bosses, and particularly the final Night Lord, because they tend to kill her summon so quickly. The first place that you can get this relic effect is with the old makeup brush through her remembrance, which also includes a rune buff for the entire team. Early on, I thought that the rune buff was very good, but the more that I play the game, the more I think it's not that good. It just doesn't do that much for taking up an entire rune slot, and especially if you complete any Everjails, you have a chance to get this same buff for yourself or a flat 10, 20, or 30,000 runes on boss drops. Not to mention raids such as Libra and Sentient Pest, which can also give you additional runes. So as much as I love the Revenant specific effect on this relic, I would wait to use it until you get it on a relic with better effects, unless you're early in the game and don't have many or any other options to use. As far as other relics for her, it can be tempting to use relics to increase her FP. This is another one where early on, I thought that this would almost be required for her. But after playing through a number of runs with increased FP, I don't necessarily notice a huge difference. It's not that I can't tell that she has more FP at the end of the run, but it's that for the most part, it doesn't feel necessary. It's always important to remember that your FP usage is going to depend largely on what incantations you're running. I like to have at least 2 seals available to use, which should give you a variety of options as far as damage, element, and FP usage. Revenant seems to get a lot of Dragon Communion incantations, and those can do really good damage, but also use a lot of FP. If you hold the incantation, it will continue to use it, and you can burn through your entire FP pool in seconds, even if you have already increased your max FP. Flame of Frenzy also melts enemies who are weak to fire, as well as Libra, who I think might be the only enemy in the game who's weak to madness. For other examples, Elden Stars doesn't use much FP for how powerful it is, and Discus of Light and Triple Rings of Light also don't use a whole lot of FP. The incantations that you use are, of course, dependent on RNG, but also what the boss is weak to and how much FP you have. But all that I'm getting to is that you can have a variety of incantations or spells if you decide to go that route that take different amounts of FP. It's going to be pretty rare that you only have that one incantation that you want to spam that's going to burn through your FP bar right away. And for the few that do use a ton of FP, or that can go through FP very quickly, like the Dragon Communion incantations, even if you increase your FP, those are going to have the same effect and you're still going to run out of FP quickly. I won't say that increased FP is inherently bad, I just don't think it's as necessary as you might initially think. But as I said earlier, she already has the largest FP pool of any character in the game. If you go into the Night Lord fight with 2 or more Starlight Shards, you're probably going to be okay. Additionally, you're probably going to run into opportunities to buff your FP through the run and or find weapon drops that replenish FP upon attacks or even upon taking damage. So there are a lot of ways that you can mitigate your FP usage with her. Even getting FP regeneration upon successive attacks can be effective with her, again in part because of her summons. It takes 3 hits with her claws to proc FP regeneration upon successive attacks, and if you get interrupted, there is a window where you can continue attacking and still get the buff. So in practice, I think there will be very few situations where you find that you just don't have enough FP, especially if you've planned well and have some Starlight Shards. And at the end of the day, if you can save a relic slot that would have been used for increased FP and use it on something better that increases your damage or any number of other things, you can have a better loadout, you can have a better build. But if you really want to run a build for high FP, the relic that's going to be the best if you're not too worried about other effects in addition to the high FP is going to be Dark Night of the Wise. This relic you get from defeating the Everdark Noster, and it gives you increased FP as well as even more FP increase for each Sorcerer's Rise unlocked. This relic feels most tailor-made for Duchess because it also includes FP restoration upon successive attacks, but that can also work well for Revenant. As I said earlier, it can be easier to proc successive attacks on Revenant than you might think due to the help of her summons, and it only takes 3 hits with her claws to proc it. But if you are running Dark Night of the Wise largely for the FP regen with successive attacks, you should probably go a different route. It is not hard to find a weapon passive or boss drop for that same benefit. You may also be able to get a relic drop with a better combination if you don't care too much about increasing your FP. I don't want to go through every potential good relic for Revenant. Another one that I want to point out is that Hoarfrost Stomp is very strong. So if you can get a good relic that gives your starting weapon Hoarfrost Stomp, that can absolutely be worth it to run. Revenant probably is the most difficult character to play in Nightreign for a number of reasons, but that's also part of what makes her fun. You can't have a mindless run with her. You need to be thinking about what kind of weapon you want to use, what kind of incantations or spells that you want to use, how to cycle your summons, staying alive, and of course FP management. She simply has more on her plate than most of the other characters do. But being difficult doesn't mean that she's bad. She can be very, very powerful in the right hands. And I hope this has helped you realize that. I think there's probably a lot more that I could get into with her, but I also think I covered quite a bit here in this video. If you're seeking out more information on Revenant, I hope this was helpful, and for those of you who are just along for the ride, I hope you enjoyed. That's all for today.